We're in a world of hurt today in the government, in our communities, and I'm speaking about economics, right? And we are in a world where we've got falling budgets. There's about a $13 billion projected budget deficit in the state of New York for the coming year. I was just reading this morning in the New York Times how a county in Georgia has just shut down its entire public bus system. Camden, New Jersey is on the verge of shutting down its public libraries. Children in Hawaii are being furloughed 4-day school weeks. Colorado Springs has shut down 33% of its streetlights. Our governments are hurting, right? And at the same time, we're dealing with a world where we need government services more than ever. People are losing their homes, people are losing their jobs, and we're relying more than ever on government. So this is a real conundrum, and we need to look, I think, to outside of government for solutions. We need to look to our communities, and we need to look to our private sector. And that's one thing that I've started doing in my role as a government employee. And a concept that got me very excited recently when I came across it is a new book called The Mesh, published by an entrepreneur named Lisa Gansky. And what The Mesh is the idea that businesses in the private sector that promote network-enabled sharing rather than ownership of products are outcompeting their traditional peers. Okay? So instead of making a lot of products or services and trying to sell it as many times as you can, you are building a smaller number of products, and you're promoting the sharing of those products. Okay? And so the seminal example here, of course, is ZipCar. Rather than making a whole lot of cars, having them sit on car lots, going to buy them, storing them near your garage, having insurance, getting rid of it at a junkyard someday, you share a car. You get it when you need it, where you need it, and you don't have to deal with it in any way, shape, or form when you don't need it. Okay? And they're even outcompeting the traditional car rental companies, which we're sharing in a sense, but still require the physical infrastructure of a fleet of cars that sits in an office and employees to staff that office, right? So ZipCar is winning, and it's beating out its traditional competitors. This is happening not just where you might imagine that sharing makes sense, right, in these big, expensive products like a car, but it's also happening in the world of media. Netflix, of course, relative to its competitor Blockbuster, which recently filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. In the world of computing, right, more and more people are hosting their websites in cloud computing environments where literally you use the computing resources you need when you need them, but you don't need to deal with that infrastructure. You don't need to pay for that infrastructure the moment you don't need it. And it literally, you turn it on and you turn it off. Even in the realm of natural resources, if you celebrate Christmas, this Christmas you're going to be able to go online and rent a Christmas tree, a live Christmas tree, and it'll be delivered to you right before Christmas, it'll be picked up from you right after Christmas, and it'll be used to replant a forest in a reforestation project. Okay? So rather than investing in the natural resources, the labor, and the financial resources to grow a lot of stuff and then throwing it away after using it for a couple weeks, you get it when and where you want it and need it, and then it is shared and reused for other purposes. Flipkey, similarly, a lot of people are now renting their homes when they're not there and making them available as rental lodging for other people so that more of our residences are in use more of the time, right? Another form of network-enabled sharing. So what's making this really take off in the private sector is what Lisa Gansky refers to as sort of a perfect storm of trends. Okay, we've got location-aware mobile devices in most of our pockets in here today, I would imagine, right? And if you're going to share things, it's very helpful to be able to locate yourself in time and space, obviously. Similarly, the ubiquity of social networks. If I'm going to share things, the people I might want to share them with are my friends, are my community, are my social network. Being able to locate my social network in time and space is also very helpful as an enabling technology for network-enabled sharing. And at the same time, of course, we're all cognizant of the fact that we have to reduce the pressure that we're putting on our natural resources. We need to make less stuff, literally. And at the same time, we are all familiar with sharing. It just makes intuitive sense. For a long time, we've shared office buildings, we've shared office spaces, we've shared wireless computer networks, etc. So what we're seeing now as a result of that, if I can get this to work, is that in government, again, we have this pressure of falling revenues, increasing deficits, and greater need than ever for government. And what could sharing have to do with government? Well, government owns a lot of stuff, right? Whether it's the millions of computers that are owned by government or the thousands of trailers that FEMA purchased and that sat unused for months after Katrina, or whether it's our Capitol up there in Albany, the Empire State Plaza, and the dozens of government buildings up there, which on literally after 5:01 p.m. Most nights and every weekend are sitting completely unused, or whether it's intangible digital assets, all the data that you find, for example, on data.gov. Government has a lot of stuff. And it's getting a lot more stuff. Every year, about $550 billion of new purchases of stuff just by the federal government alone. Okay? So there's a lot of stuff there, and it makes sense that we might want to share it. And I'm going to give you two examples of two different government institutions where we've tried to make inroads into helping government start to share. In 2006, I was in NASA, and in many ways, unfortunately, because I love space, NASA felt like it was stuck a little bit back in 1969, which of course was its heyday. NASA went to the moon within 10 years of being told it was going to do so, and did things that had never been done before, developed technologies that hadn't even been envisioned before they got started. Fast forward to 2006, right around its 50th anniversary, we no longer even have the technology to send human beings back to the moon. So in many ways, NASA was no longer the hotbed of innovation that it once was. And some of its leadership were smart enough to say, hey, we've got to look outside of our fence. We have to look at what is working outside of NASA to help ourselves reinvent NASA. So they hired some folks who'd never worked in government before, blended them with some folks who had, and we created a new program called Colab, stands for collaboration, very consistent with the theme of this TED conference today. And we did some very simple things. We brought in the CEO of Twitter in the spring of 2006 to talk to skeptical NASA management about why it makes sense to put out raw, unfiltered, unadulterated information in near real time to people on the planet, all of us, regardless of whether you work for government or not. And the Mars Phoenix lander was personified in a Twitter account and became one of the top 10 most followed Twitter accounts in the world within 2 weeks of being created. And this is very different than NASA's traditional mode of building a mission over 5 years, collecting data for a few years, analyzing that data for a number of months, and then issuing a press release or a speech or a report, right? And we even shared the work of government itself. We said, like SETI at home, we're going to use the computers of us, citizens, to do the data processing that NASA would otherwise have needed to buy many more computers to do. So the Stardust at Home mission used tens of thousands of computers of citizens all around the planet to analyze data that came back from space at negligible cost to our government and to our tax dollars. We also had NASA and non-NASA people collaborate on software development. The Whirlwind project is a Google Earth analog, which is completely open source and co-developed by NASA and non-NASA engineers. And we even shared virtual co-working facilities. We created a virtual co-working space in the virtual world of Second Life to help NASA and non-NASA people actually collaborate with one another because it's very hard for people to travel to a NASA facility to get through security. Sometimes there are visa issues, sometimes there are just literally distance issues. And we found that it was very helpful to have a virtual co-working space for NASA and non-NASA people to be able to share work and collaborate with one another better. So those are some of the things we did at NASA. And then we even shared our physical facilities. We held a community asked us to hold a 5,000-person space rave in the blimp hangar at NASA Ames Research Center to celebrate the anniversary of the first human being going to space and the anniversary of the first space shuttle flight. And that convening, that party, that community of mostly non-NASA people never would have happened without making use of that otherwise completely unused government facility. And this really struck a chord. We got a lot of attention, and a lot of people reacted very well to this idea that NASA was rolling out the red carpet to non-NASA people, even in some cases non-technical people, to actually get involved in the space program, to get involved in this part of their government, and to share the resources that it had. So fast forward here, if I can get the slide to fast forward, to 2009. I was hired as the first ever Chief Information Officer of the New York State Senate. And in many ways, there are a lot of analogs with NASA, believe it or not. Our state Senate and NASA seem like very different institutions, but similar to NASA, it was felt stuck in the 1960s. It had been under one-party rule for 43 years. And this is Malcolm X up in the Senate gallery up in Albany in 1965, and that's what a computer looked like back there. And Bella Abzug was one of the first women to run for Congress in the 60s, and similar to the approach we took at NASA, we brought in some people who'd never worked in government before, created a new office, the CIO office, and said, let's bring out ideas from outside of government into this particular part of government to try to reinvent it. And so we did some things like we made sure, like we did at NASA, that all of our information was available in real time, wherever and whenever people wanted it in a very raw, unfiltered form. So live streaming of all of Senate session and committee meetings and committee hearings, so you could literally see what was going on if you were not in Albany. And we made sure that all of our data is available in an easy, intuitive, real-time way. So just type in a keyword that you're interested in, and you could find out what's happening legislatively at that very moment up in Albany. And like mesh businesses, we said we'll use social networks. That's where citizens are, and we need their input, we need their ideas, so senators are now interacting with their constituents through social networks. Mobile devices, if you're in the Senate chamber floor in Albany, or if you're in the subway, you can find out what's going on, and you can participate now in this part of government. And in aggregate, what we think that has done, it's really collapsed this physical geography of being 3 hours away from Albany. Half our citizens live here in New York City, 3 hours away from Albany. And we think that that has made this part of our government not only more transparent, but actually more efficient and more effective. And that's really what we're after here today. So we've seen that government can share its software, open source software collaboration, its data. You can go easily find out how much I get paid online. Even its physical facilities, the space rave, our ideas and opinions. We have an opportunity to give them through social networks and crowdsourcing platforms. And even the workload, even sharing our computers that we have in our homes to do the work that government would otherwise have to buy computers to do. So there's a lot of sharing, obviously, possible within government. And what does that enable? Well, certainly savings are one of the goals, but I think in addition, it is going to make government more effective and change our relationship with government. I think that we can really engender what you might think of as a citizen bureaucracy, where we're actually doing the work of government in a very meaningful way. So rather than submitting a report to 311 here in New York about a problem on our street, maybe we submit that report to each other as a community, and government helps to organize and curate that information, but we also are permitted to self-organize to resolve that problem, so that rather than waiting for a crew of civil servants to come out and deal with it, we actually can deal with it ourselves and then report that it's been dealt with to government. And in that way, we become more peers in a network with our community and with our government, and can reduce the workload of government, make government an organizer rather than a direct labor provider in all cases. Just one other thing, I think also there's a potential for there to be direct democracy in a very real way. I think we'll see in the next couple of years the opportunity to actually weigh in on issues that we care about and that we know something about when and where we want to, in a way that we actually feel like then in turn affects policy, affects regulation, affects the laws that we live under, rather than just electing somebody every 2 years, every 4 years, and throwing all the responsibility over the fence to them. So I think in aggregate, that'll result in a more effective government, and also, importantly, a more efficient government from a financial perspective. Just 2 weeks ago, a group of the CEOs of the largest tech companies in the country delivered a plan to the White House that they said could save $1 trillion by 2020. And a lot of this plan is about sharing. A lot of this plan is about building shared services. So this is things like shared asset management systems, shared accounting and payroll systems, kind of boring, dry stuff. But at the end of the day, it is about sharing information assets, and it's about building something once and then reusing it rather than building a bunch of redundant systems. And what if that happened not just at the federal level, where they think they can save $1 trillion, but at the state level, at the local level, not just in the executive branch, but in the legislature, in the judiciary branch, not just in a couple of states, but in every state? And what if that happened not just within the walls of government, but with citizens, with nonprofit organizations, even with private sector businesses? I think the potential savings there could be an order of magnitude more than $1 trillion by 2020, and that's the kind of game-changing savings that I think we need to get ourselves out of this pickle. Okay, so how do we make that happen? Well, I think we need a comprehensive, sort of holistic, transformative organizing principle like mesh government, which is built on existing trends, right? The runaway success of mesh businesses in the private sector, the we government and open government movement, which has been so strong since Obama's open government directive was issued in January 2009, and the existing call for government consolidation and streamlining, especially in IT. You put all those things together, and you contextualize it as government primary job being to share rather than to own or to directly serve, and I think that you could really see some exciting changes fast. In the next year, my guess is we're going to see the New York City Department of Information Technology adopt a ZipCar model for city government car fleets, for example. So rather than 50 government agencies, city agencies owning their own car fleets, most of them going unused most of the time, instead having civil servants share cars and have only the minimum number that are actually needed. And maybe if they even still have time left over on those cars, maybe they'll actually donate those cars to ZipCar so they can generate some additional revenue. Who knows? The New York City Council, similarly, is working on a proposal to share New York City's hundreds of government buildings with entrepreneurs, so that if you, say, develop a more energy-efficient light bulb, you'll be able to use government buildings as a test platform for those light bulbs, reduce your cost of testing your product, bring it to market faster, and create jobs here in New York. Again, all using a public asset, which should be ours in the first place because we paid for it. So those are the kind of things I think we'll start to see, and I think in order to make this really happen, though, transformatively, to make it happen as fast as we need it, because kids are not getting to go to school, libraries are closing, bus systems are shutting down, I think we need to socialize this within government, and I think that we, those of us who work in government, and we, those of us who don't work in government, have a role to play there. So my invitation to you today is to go to, literally, your elected officials and tell them about this, ask them about this. Go to meshing.it, which is the community that is talking about mesh businesses, where I'm told by Lisa Gansky there'll be a whole category for government mesh innovations up by Monday, and learn about it. Buy her book. Bring that book to your elected official. Give it to them. Ask them what they can envision sharing from the part of government they're responsible for that they're not sharing today. And I think that if 200 of us do that over the next year, we'll see some really exciting changes here in New York City. And let's check back in at TEDxGotham 2011 and see how we're doing. So thank you very much.